Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into the classic tale, Garib Ki Barish, which beautifully translates to the poor man's rain. On the surface, it might seem like a simple folktale, but we're going to unpack some seriously profound lessons today about resilience, the completely unavoidable forces of karma, and what it actually means to demonstrate true leadership in the real world.
I mean, think about it. What happens when a poor farmer loses absolutely everything to a storm, only to somehow stumble upon a village made entirely out of gold? It sounds like your classic fairy tale, right? But, as we'll uncover in this explainer, the events of this incredible journey take an absolute devastating tragedy and flip it into a massive triumph of human character.
Section 1. Adversity and Ramdan's Struggle.
All right, so let's meet Ramdan. He's a hardworking, hopeful farmer from Dharmpur village. To get his farm going, he takes out a pretty substantial loan from the local village moneylender, Seth Hariram. And honestly, initially, things are looking great. The weather has been perfect, a highly promising harvest is expected, and Ramdan is even promising his kids new clothes, toys, and bangles. But then, out of nowhere, disaster strikes. A sudden, insanely violent storm rolls in, flooding the fields and destroying the entire crop. In an instant, Ramdan's family is left completely devastated, without a single handful of grain or any resources to survive. All of his hopes are literally washed away in the floodwaters.
Completely desperate, Ramdan goes to the moneylender, practically begging for just a little more time to pay off his loan. He promises, that the next harvest will for sure clear the debt. But Seth Hariram responds with this chillingly ruthless line, "I care about papers, not emotions." Wow. He evicts Ramdan and his family from their ancestral land right on the spot. They are forced out into the unforgiving world with absolutely nothing. So now they're homeless. Ramdan moves his wife Sunita and their kids into a broken-down hut at the edge of the forest that an old saint let them use. And his new daily grind? It is grueling. He walks deep into the forest, chops wood all day until his hands are completely blistered, sells that wood in the market for literal pennies, and buys just the barest of basic rations. We're talking some potatoes, onions, and flour. They're eating dry rotis every single night, and yet there is not a single complaint from him or his family. It's just a beautiful, raw illustration of immense resilience.
Section 2. The Magical Golden Cave. Pushing himself to the absolute limit just to provide a tiny bit more for his family, he's really hoping to finally buy some jaggery for his daughter and maybe a colorful sari for his wife. Ramdan ventures way deeper into the woods one evening and totally loses his way. The sky grows super dark, rain starts pouring down, and he is completely disoriented. But then he spots this faint light. He walks towards it and actually discovers a glowing yellow cave that opens up into this surreal, completely empty village made entirely of solid gold. Before his brain can even process what he's looking at, royal guards approach him and bring him before an old, wise king sitting on a throne.
So the king asks Ramdan who he is, and Ramdan simply tells the honest truth. He's just a poor farmer whose crops were completely ruined, whose land was stolen by the Seth, and who now cuts wood just to keep his kids breathing. The king carefully assesses him and instantly recognizes his pure honesty. He acknowledges Ramdan's uncomplaining struggle and declares something absolutely profound. He says that true kings are actually those who fight for their families and survive without complaint.
Section 3. The Sweet Reward of Honesty.
Now this fateful encounter completely changes the trajectory of Ramdan's entire life. The king rewards him with a small chest of gold coins, and Ramdan heads straight back to his world. But notice his priorities here, guys. He doesn't hoard the wealth or go crazy. First, he buys plentiful rations, some new clothes for his kids, and that long-promised sari for his wife. Then, he marches straight over to Seth Hariram, slams the exact amount of his debt onto the table to clear his name, and reclaims his rightful ancestral land papers.
And this brilliantly highlights Ramdan's insane work ethic. He doesn't just stop at surviving, and he definitely doesn't use the gold to live lazily. He uses this second chance as capital to start a highly successful wood and coal business. He brings wood from the forest, opens a warehouse right in the village, provides fair prices, and even starts creating jobs for other people. He completely transitions from a destitute, desperate farmer into a highly respected business owner, earning the deep respect of his entire village.
Section 4. Seth Hariram's Greed.
But you know how it goes. Success breeds suspicion. Seth Hariram is literally burning with jealousy. He just cannot accept that this poor farmer he evicted is suddenly thriving. Convinced there's some secret stash of stolen wealth somewhere, the greedy moneylender stalks Ramdan into the forest one day when Ramdan goes back simply to thank the king.
Seth spots the glowing cave and immediately decides he's going to exploit this magical wealth all for himself. So this brings us to a massive, pivotal moment of tension in the story. When this incredibly greedy man steps into the magical glowing cave, fully expecting to be showered with riches, will he actually receive the gold coins too?
Well, the outcome hinges entirely on the stark contrast in their intentions. Think about it. On one hand, you have Ramdan's intent, pure, humble, seeking only to feed his family, and later simply returning to say thank you. On the other hand, you've got Seth's intent, stepping into that sacred cave to steal the gold out of pure, unadulterated greed. And as we find out, the magical cave only reveals its blessings to the pure-hearted.
So instead of gold, Seth gets a massive dose of the cave's justice. The second he enters, total darkness falls. A booming voice tells him that he absolutely reeks of greed. He is utterly rejected by the king. Because he spent his entire life stealing lands from the poor and exploiting the vulnerable, the guards capture him and imprison him in the darkness. It is the ultimate display of karma in action. His own greed quite literally becomes his absolute downfall.
Section 5. The True Servant King.
With our antagonist finally facing ultimate justice, Ramdan receives a massive shock back in his village. A royal messenger shows up in the dead of night. The old king summons Ramdan to the palace and reveals that he actually has very little time left to live, and his kingdom currently has no heir. Out of everyone in the entire realm, the king has chosen Ramdan to be his successor. Why? Because of his proven, unshakable character, his honesty, and his unrelenting hard work. Now, how does a formerly destitute farmer react to gaining ultimate power? When he's finally crowned, his young son looks up and asks him if he is now the son of a king. Ramdan corrects him with this incredibly powerful truth. He says, "We will live as servants, not kings." It's just beautiful. He cements his role as a true leader of the people, someone who uses his power not to rule from way up above, but to actually serve from within.
Let's take a step back and look at this overarching journey, because the transformation is unreal. He goes from his absolute lowest point, a poor farmer drowning in debt and struggling against nature, to a homeless woodcutter dealing with profound loss through immense resilience. From there, he transforms into a successful businessman, experiencing reward and growth but crucially remaining grounded. And finally, he becomes a crowned king, representing ultimate justice and the triumph of a pure heart.
As we wrap up today's explainer, we really have to ask ourselves, how often do we let greed blind us to our own blessings? Ramdan's story isn't just a fun fairy tale about magic gold. It's a super profound reminder that resilience, honesty, and a servant's heart are the true riches in life. If a magical cave tested your intentions today, what would it reveal? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.